What's up, everyone? Welcome to Fulfillment Project. We have Lucas here today. He runs Veritas Copy. He's the founding and marketing specialist. And what I love about his company and his brand is it's all about human-first content, focusing on authenticity and building trust and credibility. So, Lucas, welcome to the show, brother. How's it going?
It's going well. I'm glad to be here.
So I want to dive in to authenticity, but first, before we get there, talk to me about your company. Where are you calling in from today? Why are you sitting in the seat you're sitting in, and how'd you get there?
Yeah. This is a decade or more in the making. I live in Fort Worth, Texas, and prior
Oh,
to
baby. Giddy up.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've lived in Texas for 5 years, and I was in Austin prior, but it wasn't until I moved to Fort Worth that I felt like I needed to own a pair of cowboy boots, is what I always tell people. So, um, yeah, it's a great place to live. But before marketing, I was actually a missionary, and so I was, working in the church and, in evangelization and sharing the gospel with specifically middle school, high school, college age students, and realized a lot of my skills from that time transferred into a marketing career, whether that's because of public speaking experience or whatever. And so I had a real knack for writing, which is kind of where I lean into as I was doing marketing for companies in my early career. Yeah, I recently left the director of marketing role and had the entrepreneurship bug, just wanted to scratch the itch a little bit and was like, okay, what do I love about marketing? I love writing, I love copy, I love
Yeah.
kind of the strategy that goes into it. And so let's see what I can build and how I can serve clients in that capacity. So
Well, and
that's kind of the
amazing.
short.
That's amazing to me because I'm 16 by this time. When this goes out, it'll be about the 20th episode of Fulfillment Project. And one thing I've learned about podcasting, and I think it's true also about copy and marketing and writing, is the more natural it seems, the more preparation it took. The more simple and natural, like nothing happens simply and naturally. There is so much that goes on behind the scenes. You see a good LinkedIn post, you see a good book, you see a good newspaper article, whatever, blog post, podcast. It seems so chill, and nothing about it is chill. Like, this is the most fun moment talking to you right now, Lucas, but the amount of prep that went into hitting the record button, I've been telling people, man, if I could offload everything but hitting the record button, that would be amazing, because there's so much to it. Just like the work you're doing, I'm sure, in a different way. But how's it been going so far? Where'd you start? Where are you going? Tell me about all that with the biz.
Yeah, so I'm very blessed, very thankful. I've built quite a network over the last 10 years. And so I think anybody who starts in business or who launches their own thing, the first place that you look for clients and the first people you tell are the people in your immediate circle. And so,
Yeah.
immediately it's been adding clients left and right from folks that I've worked with in the past or just know. And so that's been awesome. And simultaneously, what kind of reconnected us was getting back into social media, specifically LinkedIn. I don't really do any of the other social media platforms, at least in terms of creating content. LinkedIn is kind of the place, is where I choose to spend my time. So that's been really great, just expanding the network and kind of going from there. But I'm kind of in this freelance slash consulting slash agency model. I haven't really decided what I want to be when I grow up, is kind of where I'm at with that. But
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out, and what adding some more clients to the business will do. So
Well, and as my mom always said, you can't figure out where you're going if you're not moving. So you just need to start
correct.
moving. And then, hey, you'll figure some things out. You'll pick up some clients, you'll pivot, you'll get a tough client, and you're like, maybe I don't want to go that direction, So experiences help you decide what direction you're going to go, how much you're going to accelerate, where you're going to break. Thinking about networking and LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn because it's a very serious audience, seemingly unlike some other social media. People on there, they're practitioners. And so I find I get a really good response from LinkedIn. Is that the same or a similar reason you went over to LinkedIn, or what took you over there?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of things. LinkedIn is I would agree. One of the few mostly serious social media platforms left. There's a good mix of all kinds of content and folks on every other platform, but LinkedIn is completely oriented still towards business, towards doing business, towards hiring folks, to finding clients, kind of the whole networking, the whole gamut, right? And however, there is an interesting new wave in the LinkedIn game, which is people are starting to kind of show their true colors on the platform, which is nice. It's not stuffy corporate anymore. It's,
I have
people
noticed it's
talking
getting
about,
more colorful. Yeah,
yeah, for good or for ill, it's there's always the good and the bad with those kinds of things, but
right on.
you do see a lot more stories. You do see a lot more people being vulnerable, and everybody has their own take on whether that should be happening there or not, but I think it's for the best.
It certainly injects personality into what was once a very curated platform where, and every social media is curated. A lot of times the argument is people only post their highlight reel on there, which is mostly true. But it used to feel so keyword heavy. I'm a hard worker. I'm analytical. X, Y, and Z. And now you get people just building that out with a little more nuance and a little more conversation, which I appreciate.
Totally. Yeah, and you also have people who are just getting savvier in building their online businesses. There are a lot of people who are doing the kind of the solopreneur path that I'm adventuring out on, and so they treat their LinkedIn profile as a landing page. That's the top of their funnel if you want to get into marketing speak. And so it is, to your point, it's not purely about kind of the SEO keyword optimized stuff, as much as it's what's the first impression you want to give when people land on your profile, and how do you want to show up? How do you want to present yourself? What's the message you want to get across right off the bat? So that seems to be really working, and yeah, I'm leaning into it until it doesn't work.
Amen, brother. So I want to go back to networking. You said you're starting with your network you've been building over 10 years, quite extensive. And I'll tell you what, we met about 10 years ago. You left a really good impression on me. So it is amazing. Just for the listeners, every interaction matters. You have no idea how someone is going to come back up in your life, how they're going to bubble back up. And maybe they don't. But a lot of times people do come back around. Your paths cross and intertwine through life. And I think that's such a good reminder to like resist RBF, the resting bee face.
Mm.
Resist pushing someone off because they don't have any immediate value to you. Treat everyone like they're important. I think that's like a good life lesson in general. But there's a practical side to it, which other than just feeling happier, I think people that act that way are generally happier than people that don't. But also, I reconnect with you. I'm naturally more inclined to have a positive connection with you because you left such a good impression on me all that time ago. So it is amazing networking 10 years. I totally believe you have a massive network. What did you have a philosophy about building a network? Because, and I'm diving into this specifically because networking is such a huge thing. And I notice a lot of people go to networking events without a goal. They don't really understand why they're there other than they're networking. So for you, were you purposely doing it? Was it an accident? Has your mindset around networking evolved over the years?
10 years ago or more, I don't know if I ever would have said that I was purposefully networking. I fundraised for years as a missionary, and my thesis with that was no matter how much somebody can give, everybody is a potential donor, no matter what. And I think when it came time to like transition from missionary life into the business corporate career, I quickly then adopted that and said, every relationship I have to play the long game with this, right? Like to your point, not everybody is going to be able to do something for you in the short term. And nor would I recommend everybody approach every individual relationship with this very utilitarian transactional mindset either. I think on one hand, you have to be very personable and just be good at making a good connection with people and leaving an impression, and just being a person of high integrity, virtue, character, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
while at the same time to your point, like coming to those events or even just as you're interacting with people, keeping in the back of your minds, like, I'm really interested to see how I might need to shoulder tap that person in the future. And just kind of having that disposition, right? I worked with people 5, 6 years ago that I never thought I would be in touch with again. And then I go and start this business, and they were one of the first 20 people I message. You know what I mean? And so it's like, eh, obviously, practically, you have to get people's contact info. You have to connect with them on social media. You have to do whatever you have to do, but I think it is making sure that you make a strong connection from the get-go. Leave a good taste in people's mouth. Like don't be somebody who, as my dad would always say, pee in other people's cornflakes. That's that's not what you want to do. Don't be that guy. That's not
No.
enjoyable. And it doesn't serve you well in the long run. It just doesn't. And so be
And even
somebody.
again, not thinking about it utilitarian, but it's also just like you want to be the type of person that other people look up to or look to
Correct.
or have a positive impression of. There's no reason to leave someone with a negative impression of yourself. It's not good for you. It's not good for them. It's not good for the butterfly effect of all the dominoes that will fall because of that. So yeah, I agree. If you think about life in a utilitarian way, that's very empty and very lonely and very grabby. Like I'm just trying to grab stuff for myself. And I heard someone say it once, like, you want to live your life with an open hand. Gifts can get put in there, but they can get taken away. They can get moved around and they can be expanded or reduced. And that's freedom. When you're not clenching on to things or grabbing things, that's freedom. Funny little networking story. In eighth grade, I was not thinking about networking. I promise you that. My eighth grade basketball coach challenged us one day who could do 1,000 push-ups over the eighth grade basketball season. And I took him up on it and I freaking did it. I did 1,000 push-ups. Okay, well, season ends undefeated. Besides the point, I'm studying international business in college and I run into our assistant coach at breakfast one day. And he's like, "Oh, Matt, our head coach, he's working in Europe. You're studying international business. You should shoot him an email." And so I did. Turns out he's the CFO of a big European business. I end up moving there, living in his beautiful penthouse on the Rhine River in Germany. I learned so much over the course of that year working with his company. And it was all because I left a positive enough impression on him for him to answer my email, so many years later. So that I certainly wasn't intentional, but just being positive and leaving people not being in their cornflakes, as your dad would say, there's value there. There's value there. So you've got an untraditional path. You didn't go to college. Is that right?
Yeah, I dropped out of college. Yeah.
So how far along did you make it into college before you realized it wasn't for you?
1 year. I finished up my freshman year. I think I finished that year with like a 2.6 GPA or something. Not something to write home about by any means. I got into all of the extracurriculars that they say not to get into in college and all of those things that quickly realized not only was college not right for me, like I, I, I was too young and immature to handle that freedom well. And I also just didn't like how I was living. Just plain and simple. I hated it, quite honestly. And so, as every college dropout does, I went and became a missionary.
That's a natural, very natural connection there. Why I like it in the context of fulfillment project and what I'm trying to uncover on this show, Lucas, is a lot of people think, not everybody, but a lot of people think you have to follow X, Y, Z, ABC steps to get to where you want to go. You got to put your head down and you got to live a life that is not fulfilling. You have to do things that aren't fulfilling. Let me just close my eyes, grit my teeth, and run through the wall. And then one day I'll wake up and I'll be happy. And it's like, no, there are certainly sprints in life. There are certainly times you have to put your head down and plow the field. There are times of discomfort. And I even recommend purposeful discomfort regularly to prep you for life's discomfort that's going to hit you from the side that's unexpected. But if you hope to wake up 60 years old, retired with a lake house and a condo, I'm going to say it ain't going to happen. Because everyone I know that tries that method wakes up and they have no hobbies. They have not cultivated a retirement life. They haven't cultivated hobbies, friendships, causes to support. I like to think of starting in limited way. You know, you and me are both young guys, young families. We don't have a lot of time, but you start to weave these things into your life as expressions of the person I want to grow into, so that one day, hopefully, when I am working less, when my children are more self-sufficient, I have a natural bridge to get to. So I love that you didn't take the traditional path. You didn't just plow through because you felt like you had to. You took, as they say, you took the road less traveled, man. And you're supporting a family. You're supporting a wife. Talk about that a little bit. I'm sure it was very scary. I'm sure there was a lot of fear along the way. What was that like? And what is that like? You're in the middle of it right now.
Yeah, so a little bit of my background, I am one of 6 kids. I come from a large Catholic family. I grew up in Western North Dakota, and I actually grew up on an Indian reservation. I'm not Native American, if you couldn't tell. And so I, in a very interesting way,
Fooled me,
was
man. You're a dead ringer.
yeah, exactly. I grew up a minority, which is funny saying that as a Caucasian male in the United States, but I did. And so I think from that, I took a lot of things and I loved my upbringing, but one of the things it gave me was kind of this grit and like contrarian attitude. And so leaving school in the way that I did, when I did, was scary for sure. The kind of chip on your shoulder, like, okay, I enjoy proving people wrong, not in like a spiteful way, but in a if I don't know anybody else who's done this, like, okay, it would be pretty cool if I was the first one.
Yeah.
Let's go and be the first one then. And so over the years, I for sure. Actually, it's funny. Where we first met in Ohio, I was at a pro life gala in Ohio, and he was probably 70s, 80s, super successful man. He was sponsoring this table that I was sitting at, and he had multiple kids. They were all like Duke, Yale, Harvard, Ivy League type grads, lawyers, doctors, super successful in the corporate ladder. And he asked me and all the other missionaries at the table where we went to college, what we studied, and they were all naming off what they did, and Michigan State, and this University of Wisconsin, all these schools. And he came to me, and I was like, I actually dropped out of college. I never finished school. And he looked pretty dumbfounded. And eventually in the conversation looked at me and said that I was stupid for leaving school. That's one of the dumbest things you could do. And I'll never forget him saying that to me. Um, I was kind of upset in the moment, but looking back, it was one of those, that's all right. You can have your opinion. The world hadn't quite gotten to where it is now in terms of, not needing a degree and building a meaningful career in business. People didn't quite have that mentality yet, but it was
Yeah.
starting to come around. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take a bet on myself. And what's the worst thing that happens? I don't have a job and I have to go and do some blue collar or whatever it is, right? It's like, I don't have a lot to lose. And I think that that's one thing, especially for young people who might be listening to this or coming out of college. It's like, you don't have a ton to lose apart from, maybe some missed student loan debt payments. It's like, if you don't have a family, if you don't have all these things that you're on the hook for still, that is the time to take risks and to be calculated, but to really shoot your shot, because once kids and whatever comes around, like, you're not going to have that opportunity.
I think the world is coming around to this more. Like, if you're not going to be in a professional job like a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, college starts to lose its value. I mean, I went to college. I found it very helpful and enjoyable. I actually wish I would have taken that time more seriously and would have been more mature, because I think now how much time I had back then. It felt like I barely had any time, but man, do I wish I would have read more books. Do I wish I would have not only read the mandatory reading, but the extension and optional reading, because that just makes you a more full person. I just had a guy, Ike St. John, on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about books that don't relate to you now may shape the person you become in the future. I took a stance, because I believed this until Ike challenged me, that you should be reading things that impact you immediately so you can put them into practice and they will make a big impact on you immediately. And therefore, you'll remember it. so on and so forth. And he said, well, books you read that don't apply to you right now, they will shape the person you become in the future. And you may call back to those things in years to come, things that you read, you may hook back into them. And that really hit me. So back to I did go to college. I think I could have utilized that time better. And like you think about all the successful people that didn't go to college, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Richard Branson, Ellen DeGeneres, like Steve Wozniak, Rockefeller. There's a lot of people. College is not the answer. And maybe that's another takeaway from this is like, there's no magic bullets in life. Someone tells you do this, you're going to make it. It's not that way, because you can point to 10 people that did do that and made it and 10 people that did do that and didn't make it. So you have to discover your way, Lucas's way, whoever's listening, your way. Don't try to live someone else's life, because if you try to live to their standards, you're going to be very disappointed, because you can never live their life. You need to look internally, reflect on who you want to be, and then live that life, because you can achieve that. And if you come short, you can tweak and actually have an impact on how you're going to make adjustments and move forward. But man, trying to live someone else's life, no bueno. You just simply can't succeed that way.
Totally. Yeah, and you said something very interesting earlier as well about, you know, creating some discomfort in your life. We live in a culture that touts comfort and luxury and, all these things that maybe in some regards aren't bad things. However, when you overly optimize for those things, you strip all meaning and fulfillment out of life. You really do. And like suffering has a real way of bringing meaning and fulfillment. And I think if you do go this path, regardless what path you take, you will suffer and you will experience some heartaches or something that'll try to keep you back, try to keep you down. But especially before you have a wife and kids especially, like you don't need to go and build discomfort into your life. Kids will provide it automatically. That's just a fact. So what do you do before that to learn how to deal with it? Well, definitely, you know, uh, if it's working out, if it's athletics, if it's study, if it's whatever, like dedicate yourself to a craft, dedicate yourself to something that really puts you in that in that pressure chamber that really seeks to fortify you for those moments that are no joke you need to show up for, and I think that the path that I took, I think, provided those opportunities for me because I was kind of going upstream before it was cool. But for a lot of people now, it's you have to be very conscious and disciplined in putting those elements into your life so that you're ready for when they actually come.
So talk to me about discipline. Like, what were you doing practically? What type of planning were you doing? How did you make sure you didn't go off the rails?
Well, I mean, first off, it's just wake up at a specific time every day. Don't snooze. Um, have a very, regiment elements of your day that you can control and build in routine. Routine is good. Order is good. Human beings, we thrive on it and we need it. Idleness is the enemy, man. If you're idle, you're not going to be effective in really anything. And so I think this goes back to when I was a missionary. It was just being very ordered and regimented in how I lived. Woke up at the same time every day, prayed at the same time every day, hung out with people at the same time, went to bed at the same time. Obviously, there's nuance and obviously there's times where you have to be flexible. Like you can't be super rigid all the time. But and so that's one thing. I think
First of
also
all,
I've always
I love the idea of the golden moment. Like when that alarm
uh,
clock goes off, bam, baby, you're up. Bells on your toes. I mean, for me, I'm not bells on my toes, but you get going. And I struggled
yeah.
at that. So for people listening, if you're like, man, it's not me, I hit snooze once or five times. What I started doing, get around that, is I would plan out my morning the night before. So if I was going
Mhm.
running, I'd lay out my shorts, my socks, my shoes, my shirt, because I'm not all there cognitively. So whatever I'm doing in the morning, I just roll out of bed, brush my teeth, and it's all set up. And I've had the ability to visualize it
Mm,
as I was preparing for it. So I've thought about it, I'm executing. When I used to wait till the alarm went off to decide what I was going to do. Well, of course I'm hitting snooze because I don't know what I'm going to do. And I don't have the cognitive wherewithal to figure that out right now. So the easiest thing to do is to hit snooze. So if you're struggling with that and you want to get around that, I say plan your morning, specifically like the first 30 minutes before you go to bed. Think about it, visualize it, lay out anything you need so it's ready to go. The thing I struggle with, Lucas, is going to bed at the same time every night. I've tried the Apple timer where it tells you to get ready for bed and then it tells you to go to bed. And I, I go to bed probably within the same hour window most nights. But man, I mean, I'm not going to bed at 10:25, 10:30 every night. Were you that good or did you have a little window?
Look, I played baseball growing up, and growing up in the backyard, emulating all the greats, you realize that the greatest hitters of all time were 300 hitters, right? That's out of every 1,000 at bats, they got on base via a hit 300 times. So they failed 700 times out of those 1,000 at bats. And so obviously I'd say be a little bit better than a 300 average for sure. But, there are times where you're just not going to hit the mark. You're going to have an off day, off week, off month, whatever. It's, do you have the mental fortitude and wherewithal to get back on the wagon?
Yeah,
Can
baby.
you get back? That's what it
Yes.
is. It is obviously the discipline to do the thing, but it is even more so, can you pick yourself back up when you're beating yourself up, when you're ready to
Oh,
completely abandon
rain.
it?
Rain that wisdom down.
And that's
Go.
that's what it is. That's what it is. You have to get back up and start again. That's what it.
I'm picking this Lucasism up here. It's always hard to do an ism on the name that ends in an S. But discipline is the thing. But when you think of some of the best baseball players, they hit the ball a third of the time, and they're the best at what they do. And it's not perfection, it's consistency. It's picking it up. I've been talking a lot about that on the podcast, which is why I freaked out, because you just said what I've been trying to say very beautifully and eloquently. It's not only the discipline to do the thing, but the discipline to get back on the thing when you failed. And maybe that discipline is even more important because it crosses all domains, the discipline to start again. I love that. Something you also said was very unique to me. I haven't thought about this. Having order to the day. So you would do the same things at the same times every day. I certainly don't do that. So unpack that for me a little bit. What does that mean? What would that look like?
Yeah, generally, I think now, and if now it's my life is kind of ordered by family and prayer because I'm married, I have kids, so it's kids build in a natural rhythm to life, which is really awesome and really helpful. When I was a single guy, it was okay, I wake up at the same time every day. To your point, bedtime was like within the hour, that's pretty good. Like that's really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Um, and I had my first 3 hours every day planned for literally like 6, 7 years. I did the exact same thing the first 3 hours of my day every day. I can count on one hand how many times I missed different elements of that. And it was one because I could control my mornings the most out of every part of my day.
Yep.
Was the things that I put into that 3 hours were the things that I knew I was then once I did them, I knew I was going to be my best when I had to be my best. When I had to show up for people, when I had to show up for work, when I had to go to that event, when I had to make a fundraising ask, whatever it was, I knew that okay, if I did XYZ thing before 7 a.m., I had 3 wins under my belt already. I've won the day. The day's won. Like,
Yes.
and as
Yes.
somebody who is very goal oriented, very like need to see show me the receipts, like show me the receipts of my life of like the successes and the wins. And I don't need to see the $100 billion portfolios and all that stuff. Like, show me if you can win in like the battle in between your eyes, really. It's the mind game. Can you push yourself to do just even the little things well? Because if you can do that, then you will do the big things well. I think that that's what it's all about. I eat around the same time and, all those things. But if you're able to start the day really, really well and you're able to end the day really, really well, I think you're going to be super successful in whatever you do.
Yeah. So the meal time is something I heard someone say years ago, and it really stuck with me is that mealtime is such a great reset, specifically lunchtime. A lot of people over the last 50 years have started doing meals on the go because fast food is so prevalent. Life is so busy and everything is getting budgeted out to the 15-minute increments. And they were talking about take that lunch, take whatever it's going to be, 15, 30, 60 minutes, and eat that food with whoever you're with. And if you're alone, eat it in silence or like read a book. Don't turn your phone on because then the time disappears and you've lost that moment. But use that time as a reset. Another thing I love about what you're talking about, Lucas, is same with me. I just interviewed a guy, Alex Osberg, and he talked something very similar. The morning time is his sacred time because it's the primary time of the day you can control. So he does the most important things of the day for him in the morning. And then the rest, so long as he does that, the rest of the day seems to unravel in a coherent and successful way. To build off that, another thing my intelligent change planner has been coaching me on is planning for tomorrow today. So, like before I go to bed, I'll plan tomorrow out because there's something very sobering looking at tomorrow when there's no emotions connected to it. I know today, man, what did I wish I would have done today? What am I happy I did today? I can plan out tomorrow based on the knowledge of today. And then when tomorrow hits, I'm not spending a lot of time floundering between one task and another. I hit it hard with the knowledge of I planned this in a moment of clarity. And I'm not in the cloud of war, which is like what most days feel like is the fog of battle, just trying to push through. The end of the day comes, really happy I did some things, pretty upset I didn't get other things done or missed some things or didn't complete them the way I hoped. Bam. I'm planning my day for tomorrow, and here we go. And just to extend another thought on that, I'm doing an article on this inefficient efficiency. And that is what I consider my paper planner. I've tried all the different types of planners, digital, blah, blah, blah. I'm kind of hybrid right now in all reality. But my paper planner is inefficient because it doesn't sync to anything. I need to have it on me, but it's so efficient because it draws me away from what I'm doing. I have to look at it. I have to reflect on what I just did. I do a brief reflection on the activity, how long it took, how long did I think it was going to take. And then what am I going to do next? I listed my priorities last night. Is this still my set of priorities or do I need to tweak the order? Where am I going to go next? I decide, I think about how long it's going to take. I write it down and then bam, I go and execute. And that ritual really has helped me. So I don't block my day, same things every day, same time, but I just feel like that ritual of planning and reflecting has made a massive, massive change in my life. I'd say 15 years ago, I was in a really dark spot. I was in the desert and planning pulled me out of that desert. And to this day, it propels me and gives me energy in a way that nothing else does materially. Like nothing gets me going like a good plan. Do you ever go through periods where planning makes a really positive impact or not planning? You fall out of it. Like, of course, I fall out of it for days or weeks and like just feels like you're just swimming in the open ocean, no idea where to go.
Totally. Whenever, especially now that I'm out on my own, building my own business, the peaks are very high and the valleys are very low. And they happen very frequently. Like one day you can be on top of the world and the next you're not. And it's just kind of the natural, I think, parts of business ownership and just doing your own thing and just risk and all those things. And one thing that pulls me out of that actually is am kind of like a hybrid model at the moment. Like whatever's on my Google Calendar gets done. That's kind of the system I've
Yeah. Yeah.
built. Everything on my Google Calendar every planning that I do is kind of built around that. And I'm a yellow notepad kind of guy. And I have like a Todoist app to like my checklist and whatever too. Whenever I don't have paper, but whenever I am in one of those valleys, it's okay, let's go back to the calendar. What's the next thing I need to do? Let's win that. Let's own that.
Yep.
Let's, what's the rest of the afternoon look like? I think I think when you're able to stop and, to your point, like really bake into your planning process or your rituals the self-reflection, like how can you really dig a little deeper other than just staying at the surface and kind of unlock those learnings, those findings, kind of the thing that's going to either pull you out of that or it's going to help you take it to the next level. And when I do that, it's super helpful. And now in my marriage too, my wife and I have, we have a meeting every Sunday evening to kind of look at the next week. We plan out the next week. Here are the main elements of our week. She'll ask me what business looks like. I'll kind of give a high level overview of what I have on the agenda there, and we'll kind of make business and family overlap as much as possible. And so that's super helpful as well because yeah, I work at home, and so life is just intertwined with
Yeah.
business, and so it if whenever I do get off track, there's nothing like the need to go and change a diaper to kind of bring you back to reality for sure.
Oh, the integrated life, man. And I think more and more
Yeah.
people are living a life similar to that, where even if they're in the office, it sure feels like home life is a lot more interrelated with work and home life are interrelated together. I feel like when I was coming up, you went to work and you disappeared and you came home. And that just doesn't seem to be the way it is nowadays.
Nobody wants to live like that anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody, I think because of the internet age, people realize how disjointed and like disconnected they are, not just from other people, but just in themselves. And people are trying to find both inner and external like integration, harmony. Like there's an element of bringing order back to our interior lives, but also just our relationships and how we live. And so I really think that uh, I think that that's at the heart of it for sure.
Talk to me about harmony. That word resonates. I feel like harmony and fulfillment might be synonyms, but when you think about harmony in your life, what does that mean to Lucas? Because coming from Andy over here, I'm like, I think based on the way it sounds, I want harmony in my life.
Yeah, I think about it very, at least practically similar to order, discipline. I think they all play in the same pond. Again, practically how they play themselves out in our lives. I think that there is something intriguing with this movement towards living a more integrated life as well. Like people want to be doing things that they don't hate. That's just very simple. And I think the internet and kind of where younger generations are going with just the options we have at our disposals with business and family life and all these things is like people realize that to be truly free and to be truly themselves, and I would consider like to be myself is to be a person of character and virtue and to really live that life and emulate it for my wife and children, that I need choices, but like I need I I I need to be a formed individual to make good choices. And so I think that there's this element of like, I need to be taking care of myself. I need my lifestyle to be not ideal because there's nothing in life that's going to be completely optimized every moment, but just enough. If you can get it 80% any given day, that's great. And then like the immediate responsibilities, work, family, what have you. If you can, what is that? It's kind of like a Venn diagram, right? If those things
Yeah,
can
the
kind of
overlaps.
start to overlap a little bit, I think that that's where you start to get to that what I would call harmony, right? Like there is an overlap effect that again, practically day-to-day life, like these things don't seem totally foreign to each other. Like kind of like what you were talking about with going to work, coming home and like wife knew nothing about what you're doing and you don't want to talk about it. And then you get up and just do the same thing and you hate your life the next day. Nobody wants that anymore. And I think that there's a different way.
I think so too. And I think that can even be achieved because a lot of people don't own their own business and a lot of people do work in an office 5 days a week or 3 days a week. And I think that can still be achieved. I'm going to try and unpack this a little bit in the self reflection guide I'm going to post tomorrow after every podcast. I put out a self-reflection guide because it's always hard when I hear something. And like, if I heard what you just said, Lucas, I'd be like, I want that. And then the podcast ends and I'm like, Lucas figured out something I haven't figured out yet. And so one of my big things with these podcasts is the self-reflection guides afterwards so that people listening can internalize it and figure out what it means in their life circumstances. Because everyone's got an individual life circumstance where they need a tailor-made plan. And that makes total sense. And so with these self-reflection guides, I'm trying to help people bridge that gap. And I've actually been doing them myself every month in reflection. I go back and I do all my own self-reflection guides once I'm kind of out of the heat of the interview. And it's been so beautiful and so helpful for me. I've been growing a lot from them. And it's just amazing how good truths can impact you over and over again at different times in your life. It's amazing. So I love your thoughts on harmony and how harmony, discipline, virtue, they all kind of swim in the same pool, but they're implemented maybe in specific areas in life. And that's something to think about. And reflection is key. It sounds like you're a reflective guy. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'm naturally kind of more an internal processor. So I had the problem of over reflecting. So I'm somebody who has to force myself to be like more prone to action or else I'll just not act at all. So I think that's what this also comes down to is you have to know yourself. You really have to have an understanding of who you are and kind of your makeup and what are your inclinations and kind of what you were talking about, like how you are when you wake up sounds fundamentally different than how I am. I can wake up and have a full blown conversation like this 5 minutes after I roll out of bed. I could totally do it. And some people are more like an oven. They need like hour and a half, 2 hours to get out of
Yeah,
bed,
I got
right?
to preheat, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So
I'm
I
one of
think that
those old
that's what it
ovens.
comes
I
down
take a
to.
minute to warm up. But once I'm hot, I am hot. But just give me a
Yeah.
second to warm up. So,
Yeah. So
but that's a
just know
Lucasism
yourself.
is you got to know thyself, and you can't compare yourself to Lucas or to me because you're somebody different. So you need to take this and put it into your own melting pot, mix it around and figure out the beautiful dish that it makes in your life. Like there isn't a magic bullet for everyone, like we were talking about earlier. It's got to be good ideas are always integrated into your own life. And what's funny is I actually haven't run into this on the show yet, but you're an over reflector. And I feel like most people in the world are under reflectors. They just kind of let the current of life pull them through and they're responding to the chaos of the moment. And so most people I'm trying to pull out of the chaos and say, hey, think about who do you want to be? What do you want to have? What do you want to do? Like ask yourself these questions in a quiet moment so you can figure out where you want to aim. That's typically the issue. And you're kind of the opposite because you're figuring out how to aim. And I'm like, shoot, brother, go.
There's actually a chat GPT prompt if you're interested. I'll share it with you. But there's a chat GPT prompt that you can ask it to basically like analyze your psyche based on all of your past prompts and it'll give kind of this breakdown. It was very fascinating. Somebody shared it with me and I did it. And that was one of the biggest things is like, you're an over analyzer. You're seeking perfectionism and kind of all these things. And so one of its takeaways was to be more action oriented, more like ship something that is unbaked and get the data point, learn from it, do it better the next time. And so I think everybody would, benefit from that kind of mentality.
Oh,
But somebody like
big
myself
time.
greatly benefits from it. So
100%. So many people are perpetual planners and it's like, just do something and then microdose the adjustments as you get feedback and go, that's one thing about this podcast. I had no idea what podcasting looked like, but I just started. And one week a new microphone came because my friend Jason's wife, Sarah, was like, your voice wasn't sounding very good. So she sent me a microphone. And then my sister-in-law, Bridget, gave me a bunch of tips on how to write my articles. And she actually coached me through a couple on formulating what they look like so they read coherent and not like a third grader wrote them with a pencil with their unstrong hand, and like every week I'm learning. I actually have a list of things I've learned through this 4-month process so far and all the tweaks I've made. I want to do an episode on just those things because it's been amazing. I knew I wanted to do it. I had no idea. But one thing I've learned in life is just what you said, Lucas. The best way to start is to start and just adjust from there. Chat GPT prompts. Dude, if people listening aren't using AI, that's fine. But if you're open to it, I highly recommend it. It has changed my life over the last couple years. I wasn't an early adopter, but pretty early. So now I record every meeting that I can record where it's allowable by the T&Cs of the company I'm working with. And I learned so much by having AI dissect my meetings. What was efficient? What wasn't efficient? Who controlled the meeting? What could I have done better to achieve this outcome? Did I talk too much? How much did I monologue? What percent of the meeting did I speak? Could I have spoken less? How could I have consolidated my thoughts? How should I follow up? Here's my follow up. Was it good based on the content of the meeting? I mean, if you want a life coach and you can't afford one, AI is there for you. And you start recording your interactions, just be careful because there's no filter on this thing. So like we look in the mirror and we see abs and a beautiful body, but like what other people see might not be that, you know? And that's the way AI is. And that's why it's so good because it's unemotional. It tells you just the way it is. I want you to share that prompt with me. I'm so curious what it'll say about me. Handsome, beautiful, very intelligent.
Yeah. No, it'll be honest, I think. Yeah. Somebody shared it and it was very, very interesting. Similar, one of my highest leverage tools is an AI note taker that sits in on all of my meetings and very, very helpful as you're context switching from a sales call to client meeting to, whatever. And you're just kind of collecting all these notes and you're able to go back through. It's very, very helpful. There's dangers with AI coming from the writer, for sure. So you have to be aware of those things. But I think
Like
there are some
any
good use
tool, you
cases.
need to know when to deploy it. You don't use a wrench when you need a screwdriver, you know? And someone like you adding that human first content to what people are putting out there is so critical. You can smell AI from a mile away when it feels so empty, you know? So what you're doing is so critical because it's being overused in the wrong way. Second to last question. Sounds like you're a chat GPT, or is that your brand? Is that who you go with?
I started out with Claude was kind of the model I was using initially, or the tool, and I made a switch over to ChatGPT when I realized you can create custom GPTs, and you can kind of train the model on different documentation and kind of form it and kind of make it more proprietary, if you will. And I don't think Claude or some of the other tools quite can do that. And if they do, I never took the time to learn. So, anyways, that is kind of my flavor at the moment. I have different clients and folks that I work with who opt for that as well. So it's just easier in that regard. But it is funny. Have you ever heard of like AI hallucinations? You've heard about that whole
No.
yeah. So the AI models are still at the point where they're not, they're not 100% bulletproof, and they do this thing called AI hallucination, right? Which essentially is like, that you'll use like the deep research function on ChatGPT, which essentially like it'll crawl the internet and a bunch of links and all these things and put together this detailed report on a particular thing you asked it for. And there are a lot of folks in like law firms or doctors or PhDs, like people who are writing very research heavy, like source backed materials that are realizing like, oh, it's just starting to interject like super random false information. And when you find it, you can ask it and it'll be like, often I'll ask, like, where did you get that? And it'll say, you're right. I totally just made that up. This is actually what's correct. And
No
so
way.
you have to, yes, you have to, that's one of the dangers is like, you have to be, if you're going to use it for a particular thing, especially like sourcing or research or whatever, like you need to still do your due diligence and comb through it, make sure that it's all correct, or else you are going to run into some situations where it just completely hallucinated and lied. It's
No
crazy.
way. That's insane. Lucas, brother, thanks for joining Fulfillment Project today. You get the last word. Where can people find your work? Sounds like LinkedIn, they search Lucas Wollschlager. They can find you there. Anywhere else they can find you.
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best place. I'm working on my own website and those kinds of things right now, but LinkedIn is the best. If you want to connect, follow me, connect with me, send me a DM. Would love to meet and connect there.
Lucas, thanks for coming on today. Everyone, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Fulfillment Project. If you got this far, I hope you've gotten something out of it. Share it with a friend and subscribe so you don't miss any of the future episodes. See you next time.